It was an amazing time. And I only remember it as a time of confusion, which I think is really something. I've learned more about this period through research since I've been working for the National Park Service.
Betty Soskin is one of the most enthusiastic and passionate national park rangers you can ever hope to encounter. At 88, she holds the distinction of being the oldest park ranger in the nation. This would lead you to believe that she's been doing her job for ages, but, well, that's not really the truth. What's surprising is that Betty first started wearing her badge and her hat just about 3 years ago.
You can start a new career at 85. Yeah, it's rather amazing.
Betty Soskin is a ranger at the Rosie the Riveter World War II Homefront National Park in Richmond. She was one of the driving forces behind the park and also a touchstone to history on the great mobilization that shaped this country between 1942 and 1945. The park celebrates the contributions made by people that built the victory ships and also the sweeping and lasting cultural changes that occurred during World War II.
I think that having the privilege of helping to shape a new national park is something to be envied. And that's what I feel about the work that I'm doing. I'm helping to define this park. It will be maybe 10, 12 years in the making. I will have maybe another year or two with it, hopefully, if my health holds out. That's enough time to see that the conversations that should be held are being held, to see that the outreach job that I think needs to happen, because it's so complex. This park tells so many stories, and I think because of my maturity, I really think it comes with age, I think that I'm at a stage in my own life where I know how all the stories turned out.
Betty was born in Detroit, but spent most of her first 6 years at her family home in New Orleans. However, that changed dramatically in 1927 when her family was forced to move west.
Our family lost everything in the Louisiana, in the New Orleans floods. That was the year 1927 when the levees were bombed to save parts of New Orleans from being deluged. My family arrived here with my mother with 3 little girls and everything in a couple of cardboard suitcases, and that was it. That was our beginnings in East Oakland, where we moved to live with my grandfather.
Betty was raised in what was known at the time as a little shotgun house out on 75th Avenue in East Oakland.
My grandfather, who we knew as Papa George, he was George Allen, who was actually the son of a slave. Great-grandmother was born into slavery in 1846. She lived to be 102. She therefore died in 1948 when I was 27 years old. So that all of that American history from my great-grandmother from 1846. My mother, who was born in 1894 and lived to be 101, and then me. So that in those years, from 1846 to the present, is all of that African-American history.
Betty went on to graduate from Castlemount High School in Oakland. She was 20 years old when World War II broke out on December 7, 1941. Betty is the first to point out that she was never a Rosie the Riveter. In fact, she never even saw a ship. However, she did help with the war effort, first at the Federal Building in San Francisco, and then back in Oakland at a union hall where workers came to cash their paychecks.
I went to work in the Jim Crow Union Hall because the unions weren't yet integrated. Very small union hall. A union hall that was absolutely powerless. It had no vote in the international. Black workers were paid less than white.
Time, the most vital natural resource of a country at war. Inside of 24 hours, 1/20th of a freighter or a tanker can be built.
Industrialist Henry J. Kaiser was the visionary that built the Richmond shipyards, and his war philosophy was simple: build ships better and faster than the enemy could sink them. To do that, he recruited people from all over, and suddenly women were in the workforce, and they played a vital role in the great mobilization of this country. Rosie the Riveters worked around the clock, 3 shifts a day, every day, except Christmas, building planes, tanks, and the weapons of war. The population of Richmond went from 28,000 to 98,000 almost overnight. Generally, it took 18 months to build a ship before the war. With Kaiser's prefabrication production techniques in place, cargo ships were being launched once every 45 days. Eventually, by November 1942, a ship was launched from the Richmond Shipyard No. 2 in just 4 days and 15 and a half hours.
People walked for miles and miles to get here to do this work. And there's a lot of pride in the Rosies that I meet now. Those who are surviving, the black women who have kept their badges and who look back on that time as being a high point in their lives. I mean, I've done so many things since those years that I have to work hard to go back there in my head to understand that and to work with it. There are many women for whom that was a high point. And I think a lot of African American women that would be true for. You can tell us something about them.
Betty takes great joy in her current mission, and she recently made a memorable appearance in her granddaughter's 4th grade class.
I was show and tell in full uniform for my granddaughter's 4th grade class. And for her to be able to bring her grandmother, and this is my park ranger grandmother, was incredible.
The importance of Betty Soskin's contribution as an elder spokesman for her community is beyond measure. And each and every day, she takes great pride in wearing her uniform.
And I wear it always. The reason is that every time I'm on the street or in an elevator or on an escalator in uniform, I'm announcing to every little African American girl around, every little girl of color, that this is a career option. I may be the only African American ranger they see. And as long as that's true, then I need to wear that uniform because there's a lot of people under this hat with me. A lot of them. And the pride I see in the African American community in what I'm doing is just amazing. I mean, it's humbling because I'm a part of the community, and as such, we share that pride, and yeah, I love it. I love being under the hat, but I'm very aware that I'm not under it alone.